In all of your experience, what would you say is the most crucial component towards ensuring that communities are able to progress with dignity?
Well, I'd love to answer that because, there was a turning point in our education program that came about 6 years after we had been implementing this program in hundreds of communities already. But in 1996, the women had asked to learn more about their own health and all aspects of sexual and reproductive health that they knew very little about and had had an opportunity to discuss among themselves and with people from the outside also, and bringing in new information. And when we started this, we did research, and what we found is we couldn't do this health work without first addressing something so critical, and that was human rights. Not only human rights, but human rights and responsibilities. And our whole program changed after we made that introduction in a way that was very easy for communities to understand, not through academic language that was difficult to understand in some of the human rights instruments, but very simple, what we call human rights principles of dignity. For example, everyone has the right to be free from all forms of discrimination, and you have a responsibility related to that right, and everyone has the right to be free from all forms of violence, etc. Wow. When we introduced that program or that human rights component into the program in 1996, we were so surprised because for 6 years we've been doing the program, and suddenly there were so many new results. We said, wow, women are standing up, they're speaking out. They held marches, they always said they're very peaceful marches, because they wanted to do things in a way that was very adapted to the African culture, not being aggressive or using violent terms, we're fighting against this or that. No, we are seeking well-being, and those are our values of peace, unity, cohesion, health, well-being. And there are certain things that are violating us. They're not leading us to achieve those results. For example, violence against women. And we saw them leading these marches and calling in the radio and saying, we're not doing this march against men. We're doing this march for the well-being of our families, of our communities. And we know that, they may have had a different model before, but now we're letting everyone know that we no longer accept these things, and we know that this is going to lead to more dignity for all. Mm-hmm. And wow, we were so surprised. First, we didn't understand. And then we realized that human rights and responsibilities learning was so important that we actually put it at the very foundation of our program. And from that time on, I would say from 1997, we started having people ending female genital cutting, child marriage, violence against men and women. And I would say perhaps the most important thing was what Yussuf talked about earlier, the relational aspect. Women suddenly realized, and men started realizing, that they could make changes in their roles and their activities that they'd never thought of before, that now they could work as partners and friends rather than the man dictating everything. And again, it was the way in which I think Tostand did it. It was not fighting against the men or against this or that, or it was really about promoting. It was positive. Let's go towards well-being. Let's go towards health. This is the society we want for the future. We want all people to be involved, men, women, and children. So let us respect the human dignity of all people. And since we put that human rights and responsibility at the very beginning, things have just moved forward in a way that we could never have imagined. It was amazing. And this is why in our training, what we have seen, Elena mentioned the training center. It's one of the things that most of the participants who've come, and the religious leaders are using this, the NGO leaders, And then the community leaders are using this and spreading this again, they're Tostanding.
It's a verb.
Because they're ones reaching out to their social networks and saying, look, this isn't about, shame and blame or criticizing. Yes, we did this because we loved our family and our traditions and our ancestors, and we still love them. But we're going to keep what is positive and will help us to promote well-being. And we're going to stop what isn't doing that. And that has been an approach that has been very powerful.
Wow.
And where we have seen tremendous results. So I would say that has been one of the most critical elements that now we've had long experience with. That was in 1996 when we first started introducing human rights.
Yeah. What a difference that makes when you talk about, what is positive and what you're striving for, rather than talking about what you don't want. Because if you hone in on what you don't want, then you almost pigeonhole your focus and you're just trying to solve one problem at a time. But if you focus on the bigger vision and the outcome that you just described, look what can happen. You're proof of that. I think that's...
Well, we've often seen in our training seminars that people have said that actually fighting against a practice has led to the opposite impact that they had expected. And it's almost, people became more defensive because what they were doing held value to them.
Sure.
And so by attacking them, using this language, military language, if you like, of fighting, attacking, combating, and you hear this language all the time, and it makes me very sad. I think people in Tostand can agree with me, everybody, that our approach of saying, frame it differently. Frame it around what they want and let them decide, is this practice going to help us achieve better health, better well-being for our children, for our community, for our society? It makes all the difference. And so this is one thing that we have really noticed in our training seminars, is that people change the way they message, they change the way they frame their initiatives, and they're having more results.
Wow. That's fantastic.
And using human rights and the responsibilities as simple principles for human dignity has really led them to be able, in a practical way, to go back from the training and immediately initiate this strategy, this way of moving forward. The process is so important.
Absolutely. Could at least one of you share an insight that you've learned in your time working for Tostand or developing Tostand?
Yussuf?
Sure. One insight that I can share through working with Tostand, I think it's sort of related to what Molly is really mentioning, which is about how it's being framed. So one insight I would say is that the information that comes out implicitly in our context in the classrooms, it can be just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the information that's shared explicitly. And we have these situations very often in the classes where the community members or the classroom participants, of course, they assess their current situation alongside their vision of the future, or they assess their practices alongside their vision of the future. And, there's a moment when the facilitator really asks, does this contribute, or how does this contribute to our vision of the future? And, sort of clicks in the class participants' mind. You see the eureka in their heads. Wait a minute, and I think it's so important that that moment they experience it on their own. They come to that conclusion before the facilitator doesn't even have to say it, and they come to that conclusion on their own. And that moment where they come to that conclusion, it's so powerful, because then it means that this person has convince themselves. And now I think that's also what contributes to this person going out and saying, well, I have to support others to understand, that's that aspect of responsibility now coming in. And so I think this is something I've been able to see through Tostand that really marks me.
Thank you. And what change in the communities have you found to be the most impactful after going through Tostand's 3-year program?
Yeah, maybe let me share something here that I've seen, actually, having the chance, really the privilege to visiting communities that have gone through the 3 years program is, just to go back to what Molly said, but also Yussuf just said, these communities live actually principles of human dignity. And you can see that in such a holistic way. Again, it's not about something in particular. It's the body of attitudes, just the way they speak. For example, women standing in front of men, in front of chief, in front of imams, and being able to articulate what they think and being respected. That is the outcome of a long process. And that's why this is a 3-year process, because it takes time for these change. Some are implicit and processes, some are implicit, some we try to facilitate, to social engineer. But honestly, the approach is very implicit. I know Molly likes to say that because it's respectful. It comes from a place of no judgment, It comes from a place of deep respect for what is available, for what is positive. What we like to see is what is positive first. And of course, what can be improved, because we realize that everywhere there are things to be improved. And so what we have seen is really community members engaged in this process. And this process can take them so far, but what I have seen myself really experiences, what I've seen myself, experiencing in some of these field visits, it's really, again, women and men together trying to find solutions to their challenges. And they can be very different, but, it's mostly about health. It's mostly about really education of their children, and really finding solutions which are adapted and which are also very cost effective. And so, coming from a background where I've worked for several organizations, I see how much this approach not only is more sustainable and, of course, more meaningful for people because they are the ones who lead that process, but also really brings about more impact and it's more sustainable. And so, it's amazing to witness what people can do when they are empowered, when they have access to empowering education. This is a term that we really love because we see that some of us have not have access to education, formal education, but that doesn't mean that they can't go, they can't succeed, they can't really have a better future for their children, their household. So what I've seen women becoming leader, becoming really and representative, as I said before, being elected and being leader of their communities and representing men and women and really pushing the agenda of well-being for their communities. So we have seen this thousands of times. And so it becomes a pattern. It becomes really a movement, a social movement for community well-being. And really all of us at Tostand, and today we are more than 700 because the organization has grown, all of us are so proud of this and also are so committed towards this approach that we think really it's going to bring dignity for all.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you share about a person or a community that's touched you personally in this work?
Oh, I would love to answer that question because, well, I've seen so many. I think Yussuf himself was touched by the program when he came. I just want to say, he came as a volunteer and he stayed on. Now, he could have, he has a master's degree and he could have stayed on. He could have gone off to any job he wanted, really, in America or any Western country. And he chose to stay in his own country, Guinea Bissau. And when he saw the results, as he mentioned before, he decided to stay. It's very inspiring to all of us that he worked as a volunteer and in many different positions, and he worked his way up to being national coordinator of this big program in Guinea-Bissau. I want to just say that first. But to talk about a villager, one of the most wonderful stories, I was sitting eating lunch with a woman named Binta Jiao, who we just happened to be meeting and discussing together. And I said, what was the most important thing to you when you went through the program, the Tostand program? I knew she had been a participant, even though at that time she was a supervisor in the program. Oh, she said, Molly, there's no question. She said, you know, I was taken out of school when I was 14 years old and married to an older man that I really didn't know. I had no choice in this decision. And I was so young, I got pregnant immediately, but I was too young to have a baby. And I lost that first baby. And I actually lost the second child when I got pregnant again. She said it was a very painful thing that I went through. And I saw no future for myself, really, because I loved school. And then Tostand opened a class in my community. And she said, my whole life changed because I learned about human rights and about human responsibilities related to these human rights. And she said, all of us were so surprised. None of us knew this. We didn't know that our government had ratified these human rights instruments. And it really made a difference in my life. And I suddenly realized that with this education in my own language in Pular, I could go on and do more, that I didn't have to have the French, that I could take this and become maybe a facilitator. And so she worked very hard, and she did become a facilitator. And she actually was very critical in leading a movement to end child marriage and female genital cutting in the 14 villages that surrounded her own community of Medina Sharif in Kolda region, which very conservative region. And they were one of the first to stand up and decide to abandon this practice together, thanks to Binta Jiao. She went on, she was so good. We saw in her this great potential. She became a supervisor. And then she told me I was then chosen to be on the radio and lead the radio programs to share this. She said, imagine me thinking about how I had suffered and how I so dreamed that other girls in my community and in this region would never have to go through what I went through. And now I was reaching literally thousands of people through my radio program, and they were calling in. And she said, I'm so proud. But she said, Molly, that would never have happened if I had not learned about my human rights. I would never have had the confidence to really move forward and stand up and talk about what I think and what I think will help to bring well-being in the community. And that gave me so much confidence, and I've never been the same ever since. So we don't have time to even go into that, but you can also see her story. We don't have time for that now, but maybe you can look at her story when she herself talks about her experience.
We'll be sure that that's integrated. If we can't integrate it into the video, into the interview, we'll integrate it into the comments below. So absolutely, we will share her story. Thank you for that. Where do you see Tostand in the next 5 to 10 years? What is your vision for the future?
Elena, you're going to have to.
No, let's start from the young generation. Please, Yussuf.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So when I hear this question, I immediately think of Tostand's well-being agenda and really the vision that we drew. We had an experience where we drew our vision of the future, our vision of well-being for the organization in the future. And really we saw, and I subscribe to pretty much everything that was in that vision of the future. And we saw ourselves, of course, scaling well-being to communities throughout West Africa. So we're working regionally, also sharing globally. So we have a global presence through sharing our our model and our experiences. Also, we saw the people who work at Tostand generally being happier about the contribution that they're making, because their situation in the organization, of course, has improved. And also they see the situation for the people that they're providing a service, which are partner communities, also improving. So our internal well-being is actually contributing to well-being throughout the world. Also, we saw that we were, and I see that, we're going to leave behind a heritage that, we're going to be so proud to share with the future generations of Tostinians and Tostanianos. And so this is really where I imagine Tostand going, and I find myself saying it more and more. I already believe that Tostand is the best organization to work for and work with. But I think that sentiment really is going to grow more within me, but also within the communities, throughout the communities that we are working with. And, I'm saying that really because I see that we're progressing more towards a community than we are just an organization. And the community members really also subscribe to that, where they see themselves as, the leader of this movement to promote, human rights and human dignity. And so that's where I really also see Tostand in about 5 years. This community of individuals, this community of organizations as well, really just working together to promote, this well-being in the much larger sense.
Excellent. That's a fantastic vision. Just to close, if anyone listening wanted to support your work, how could they do that? What would be the best way for them to do that?
No, thank you for asking this question, Sasha, because it is an important one. And actually, it's just a continuum of what Yussuf just said. Our vision is that more resources go to communities so that they can fulfill their vision of well-being. So, if people that are listening want to know more, of course, they should go to our website. And I think they should also inquire which are the organizations that, like Tostand, really make sure that resources go to the grassroots, go to communities that then can really make good use of this and, put it into practice in fulfilling their dreams. Because I think that is what we care about, that resources not only go to Tostand for really supporting the programs of the community, but go to organizations that really listen and empower communities to lead their way. And I think that is our global somehow agenda, what our vision for the future, that there are more of Tostand that can really support communities in achieving their vision of well-being. So there are many organizations in the space, but there are few that really are committed to that truly and deep partnership, so that people, again, as Emanate does, really promote their agenda, the way they want to act, the way they want to really see their projects becoming within their communities. And so this is our call to action for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'll make sure that your link is accessible in the description below, so that anyone who wants to participate or to support, they can find that very easily. So, I just want to say thank you all for being here today. Thank you so much for your insights. I love the model. I love the philosophy. I'm behind you 100%. I think we're completely aligned on that. And I just wish you the best in your future vision and continuation of the good work that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sasha. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Muito obrigada.
Grazie mille.
Jerry Jeff.
Jerry Jeff.
Jarama.
Thank you, Sasha. Bye.
Thank you.
Here at Emanate International, it is our mission to promote nonprofits and social enterprises that equip individuals and communities to become independent, autonomous, thriving members of society. Indeed, Tostand is certainly doing great work to support sustainable development and ensure dignity for all for several different communities across 5 African countries. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be in the know for future inspirational conversations with other leaders who are making great gains and improving our world. Thank you.